Welcome to another Blue Room Weekly. Joining me, Warren, tonight. I've got with me Paul McParlin and John Wharton. And before I come to the lads, just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you are watching us on YouTube, give us a subscribe on there. And every time a new episode drops, you'll get that right in your notifications. And the same applies as well with us on Apple, Spotify, or however you get your podcasts. If you subscribe to us on there as well, every time a new podcast drops, it will go straight into your notifications and you'll be able to listen to us and access all the content. Lads, it's so annoying to having to start on a negative and having to start talking about such a poor result, because it was only last week and the week before we were talking so positively. We were saying about how the momentum's with Everton at the minute, and we've been brought right back to reality with that result at Wolves. And if I come to you first, John, I think a lot of the analysis over the last couple of days, now that the dust has settled, is, in my opinion, quite rightly being on David Moyes and his team selection. But there's some responsibility actually fall on the players as well, because I thought when that team come out, I did think it was too many changes. But I also thought that the players who came in were good enough to get a result at Molineux, and they simply didn't perform, did they? It does some responsibility, as much as it is on Moyes, have to fall on those players who started the game as well.
It does, yeah. But ultimately, Moyes is the manager, and Moyes can set the tone. You can say how we play. And we've come out of that last 50, 60 minutes of Saturday with a bit of positivity. We didn't win, we lost, but at times we had Liverpool backing away. They didn't really trouble us, Liverpool, in the second half. So we're going into that on the crest of a wave, but certainly not in a sense of disappointment and negativity. And he sets that team out. And now, no disrespect to Seamus Coleman. Seamus Coleman's been an absolute legend for the club. He's been a great servant. But this really should be the circle now for Seamus Coleman, the closing of the circle. He began his career at left back in a defeat against Benfica, and he should really end his career at left back in a defeat against Wolves on Tuesday, because Tuesday highlighted just how far gone he is now. He's not competitive as a Premier League player. Those injuries have all took the toll. He looks so far off the pace. McNeil, the same. That should probably be McNeil's last ever competitive moments in an Everton shirt. That should have told Moyes completely that he is not to be relied upon. And McNeil was. This is not to besmirch either player, because McNeil, was during the Dyche era and certainly one of the brighter parts of the play that we had. He scored some very important goals, but there's a gulf in class now, and I don't think McNeil's the answer. And unfortunately, Seamus Coleman has now reached that point. That Wednesday just looked like he retired halfway through the game, similar in when Gary Neville was chasing Matthew Etherington that game. That's what it looked like for Coleman. He looked like an old man playing against young, much younger players with much greater physicality, much greater speed, and sharper and more aware of where they are and what they're doing on the pitch.
McNeil's a strange one, isn't he, Paul? Because I really thought that Moyes would appreciate him and like him as a player, and I thought he'd reciprocate that by being a real pivotal player. And I suppose the signings we brought in the summer have, in a way, put him further down the pecking order. And I was listening to Paddy on the byline, I think it was last week, and he was saying, he just doesn't see a place where McNeil fits in. But he was a number of miserable performances the other night. And I suppose the question I want to ask as well is really, is there a bit of a concern now with the squad depth? I don't know if it's fair to judge it after one game, but it was such a poor performance. I thought the squad depth was quite better or a lot better, than we thought it had been in a long time. And I looked at the bench against Liverpool, for instance, and I thought, there's a squad there. And then the ones who came in, I thought they should be good enough to beat a beleaguered Wolves side, and they just didn't prove it, did they? Is there a concern there with the squad depth, Paul?
Yeah, I think the squad depth is definitely better than last season, but it's still not up there with the kind of squad depth you have towards the top end of the league. So by Everton's standards, yeah, the squad depth has improved, but kind of compared to other clubs in the Premier League, we're kind of catching up rather than getting better than in terms of the squad depth as well. I think the Dwight McNeil thing is really fascinating because As both you and John have pointed out there, last season he was Dyche's go-to man. He has been for the past 2 or 3 seasons. So he's kind of gone from being a key player in Everton's formation to suddenly Moyes comes in and he's out of the picture. He's not getting a look in. And you could always see from his body language, I thought, on Tuesday night, that he just didn't look interested. And, is that down to man management? I think if Moyes is not intended to use McNeil to start this season much, then let him go during the window. Bring somebody else in who can maybe be happy to be a standby on the bench. But I think it's a really difficult adjustment for McNeil at the moment, and I agree with John. Really, I just don't see where he now fits into the Everton team, and I still think McNeil is the best dead ball deliverer we have at the club. I think he's better than Dewsbury Hall taking corners and free kicks. I think the question about McNeil has always been his lack of pace. And I think, once again, it combined lack of pace with lack of interest, and you've got a really poor performance, which is what we had on Tuesday night from McNeil. It's quite interesting seeing James Garner's comments in some of the press today, saying he thought, some of the players weren't quite match fit. Well, if they're not match fit, this really wasn't the game to try them out. And like you two, I am incredibly frustrated with Tuesday night. I'm fed up of us not taking the League Cup seriously. Realistically, it's the only piece of silverware we've got a chance of winning. And every season it's saying we field an understrength team, we meet a Premier League team, we get dumped out. It happens every year. And so when I was reading all the stuff in the press earlier from James Tarkowski and from Moyes, we're really going to go for this cup this year, I just thought, yeah, I believe when I see it. And when I saw that team selection, I thought, it was a real gamble, because we won at Wolves earlier in the season, but only just. We only beat them 3-2, so we know Wolves had a goal threat in them as well. And I just think the fans were a bit down after the Derby results, even though we did have a decent second half. So you want to give the fans a boost, and what a better opportunity to give everyone a lift again after the Derby by going to Wolves, winning there, and having our names in the hat for the next round. And once again, we would have been given a home draw against Chelsea, who we've got a pretty good record against at Goodison Park as well. So it was just a real missed opportunity. I think, going back to what John said at the start there, I think I put this squarely on the shoulders of the manager. He picked the team, he set the tone for it, he took the gamble, it just didn't work. And I'm just, if we get a poor draw in the FA Cup in the third round, say away at Man City or something, then once again we're having the end of the season party in January. And for all the progress you made in the first few home games of the season, these last 4 days have just been a real setback, I think.
Yeah, when that team did come out, I straight away thought that's too many changes. I think if you'd changed a couple, maybe 2 or 3, dibbling in for Njai Grealish, or Barry for Beto, and perhaps even starting James Coleman at right back. I mean, he brought Mikalenko on in the end, so for me, he should have just started them and gone with the balance of the side with having a natural left back there. I just felt as soon as I saw the 7 changes, I just thought we're in trouble for the reasons you gave, Paul. This seems to happen every single year. I've said we are cursed in this competition. I think for as long as we play it, we'll never win it. We just seem to be a team that doesn't seem to appreciate, like you said, Paul, the need or the want to win it. And I think a lot of the frustration has come from the fact that all the talk pre-game was about how focused we were going to be, and then to put that side out. And look, we can talk all day about how we think that the players who came in should have been better or could have been better. We can talk all day about how the squad depth should have been good enough to beat Wolves, but at the end of it all, we've lost again meekly, without really putting in a performance, away from home. I think where the frustration mostly comes is it's to a Wolves side who are really struggling at the moment. Bottom of the league, lost the first 5, and it really puts us on the back foot again in terms of winning the trophy. I think for me, John, as well, when I hear Moyes in the summer talking about the fact that there's players he wanted or there was European football, he's really contradicted himself there, hasn't he? The fact that he had a chance of going for European football by doing well in this competition. And I think it's a little bit of a hypocrisy with the side he put out. I mean, he'll have his reasons for putting the team out, and this is a fan base who were desperate for a trophy, and it really was just a wasted opportunity, wasn't it?
Yeah, again, it's this, Liam Knight, who comes on here regularly, he's made that great quote about old man Moyes and old Moyes, but unfortunately, this was old Moyes. This was I don't know, it was dithering dismal Davy seemed to be back, and okay, it's a one-off game, we'll give him that. But what it's done now is put necessary pressure against us for Monday, putting us more under pressure than we need to against the team who we should have been heaping the pressure on. So Monday night now becomes a more important game than it needed to be, and we haven't quite 100% got that mentality of where Monday's going to be a cinch no matter what. Now history tells us that Moyes normally bounces back well from these. We've got the 2012 FA Cup semi-final when we are absolutely dominating a really poor Liverpool team, and then he swaps Cahill for Fellaini, and Liverpool bounce back and win 2-1. And then the next game we really play out of our skins against United and draw 4-4. Moyes has got these kind of things in him, and it's frustrating. It's really frustrating to see it happening again. We were all hoping that he'd learned from his mistakes, but he doesn't appear to. And he does have this arrogance of where he thinks every decision he makes is right. And, that's probably what makes him a good manager. But, you make the point there about European football and players like Fofana not being interested because we're not in Europe. And you're right. You win trophies to get into Europe. Winning trophies attracts players. And if you're throwing away one of your best chances of a trophy, why are we even playing? We may as well just accept 15th this year and stay up and carry on. That's not what we want. And I think Moyes needs to look now and reevaluate what he thinks he's actually hoping to achieve here. And I know people say it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction because it's just one defeat, but it's symptomatic of a problem that Moyes has had in the past. He's got quite a defeatist attitude at times, Moyes, and I think sometimes it shows through. And I think he's worried about players getting injured and players not being fit, and maybe the likes of Dewsbury Hall's teetering on a 4 bookings. But you've got to play the game you're playing next, not the game that you'll be playing next week. Your most important game is the game that's coming up, not the game that's 10 days away. And, changing the team that much, we were 6 days away from our next fixture. It's not like it was Saturday going on to Monday. So it was just really bizarre, and a couple of worrying signs again from Moyes, but hopefully, it's not terminal and it's just something that we'll bounce back from.
I think it's probably, Paul, the most frustrated I've ever heard you on a podcast, to be honest. I think, normally when we get you on, you're fair, you give fair assessments, you're quite calm, you're quite collected. And, to hear it in your voice, how frustrated you've been and how frustrated it is for you, I think that says it all, really. Paul's just briefly left us, John, so I'll come back to you just shortly when I finish this. Paul's frustration was there for all to hear then when he was saying about the selection and everything. It just feels like we've wasted another opportunity. And I think you alluded to it just then. It does put pressure on the game now on Monday. And I think that if we'd have won on Tuesday and we were all excited and we're going into Monday and we're all really looking forward to it. And then I think now it's gone to the point really now again where, if we don't win again on Monday, John, then I think there's going to be a lot of frustrated people. I am inclined to sort of, I don't want to say give Moyes a free pass because, I think that was wrong of his selection on Tuesday and he shouldn't be forgiven and that shouldn't be forgotten. But I think since he's come back, he's made very few mistakes, and in the large part we've performed really well and we've done really well in games that we should do well in, but it has brought unnecessary pressure now on Monday. I mean, I think there's going to be fans leaving the game Monday if we don't get a result very, very unhappy, and they'll have the Wolves game in their minds, won't they?
Well, yeah, it's you're not. There's people walked out of the Villa game the other week 0-0. If that was last season, even though Villa were a good side, there would have been, we lost 1-0 to Villa last season and people were forgiving of Moyes because it was his first game back. But if that had happened under Dice, there would have been a lot of murmurings, a lot of discontent. But this year, everyone saw, well, we outplayed Villa. Villa didn't come to win. Villa were negative. and people are accepting. They won't be as accepting if we don't beat West Ham on Monday. There'll be more murmurings because he'd earned the goodwill with them couple of wins, but now that goodwill and that trust's got to be earned again. So any issues on Monday will be highlighted and magnified by the defeat last week, and that's the nature of football. It's cruel, it's harsh, but you're playing at the top level. You've got to play to win, and you've got to put out your best team and what you can for every game. And realistically, we saw how the biggest disparity we saw on Tuesday was the drop off in goalkeeper. I mean, and up until that point, Travis hadn't put a foot wrong, but when that second goal come out, that reminds me of when you're playing FIFA, when your goalie just goes walkabout for no reason. You know, he just made that play, and that player, what's his name, Tolu, that absolutely reeks of a player who'll never score another goal in England again. And he scored it against Everton.
Ricky Van Wolfswinkel all over again, isn't
Ricky
it?
Van Wolfswinkel, Esteban Fuertes, the world, our history's littered with them. And, hopefully he proves me wrong. Not that I want him to score for Wolves, I really couldn't care less, but it'd just be nice not to have. But he absolutely reeked of it when he come on. And that's,
Yeah. We don't want that tag Everton associated with us again, do we? Yeah, that Everton tag.
We're trying to break away from here comes Everton.
I was just saying before you briefly... Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's it. That's the one, isn't it? I was just saying, Paul, briefly then, when you briefly left us, that I think normally on this show, you're normally quite calm and collected about your opinions, and you're quite fair in your assessments. And I could really sense the frustration in your voice about the side being selected on Tuesday. And I was just saying to John, it really does put pressure again now on Monday, doesn't it, with West Ham? I mean, how do you feel about the fact that the game on Monday? Do you think that it is an unnecessary pressure due to that Wolves result? I mean, I was just saying to John, if we don't get a result now on Monday, there are going to be a lot of fans unhappy, aren't there?
Yeah, it puts, as you and John both highlighted there, Warren, it puts totally unnecessary pressure on our game on Monday. And just touching back briefly on the Wolverhampton Wanderers game, yeah, I was incredibly frustrated, Warren. I think, being here on the pod with Keith a couple of times where we talked about the need for Everton to get some silverware, and without repeating the same thing over and over again, it was just such a missed opportunity. As John said there before, you win a domestic trophy, you're in Europe, you're attracting better side players. I know we moved for Polinia this summer, and he wouldn't come because of the lack of European football. So on every level, for a manager who's so experienced, it just seemed a bizarre and strange decision for him to make. And going back to the game on Monday, it's one of these things, isn't it? Going back to what John mentioned before, if you're a player looking to score your first goal for the club, Everton are your ideal opponents. We always oblige in that respect, don't we? If you're a manager looking desperately for a win after an awful start to the season, you worry, are Everton going to be the ideal opponents again here? And I think, West Ham conceded a bag load, conceded 13 goals this season. So we really should be able to get a few there on Monday evening. But on the other hand, they scored 5 goals themselves, only one less than us. Their best performance this season was away at Notts Forest when they won 3-0. And because we're now going into this match on a run of 3 games without a win, you're going to sense a bit of tension in the crowd if the team doesn't get going from the first minute. And I do worry that, if West Ham hits us with an early goal, then I can see the crowd reaction not being totally positive about this. And West Ham got a reasonable record when they've come to Everton recently. I think they've only lost 1 out of the last 4 games here. So that's something else we're going to have to overcome as well. If we'd had this discussion, say, 6 days ago, we'd have had no worries about this game against West Ham. But because of what's happened in the last 4 days, in particular, the performance levels on Tuesday night, also kind of our lack of a striker who's going to guarantee 20 plus goals a season, then it's just it's increased the burden on the manager and on the team for Monday evening. And it'd be interesting to see what kind of selection David Moyes goes for here, because he needs to bounce back with a win, because we don't want this losing this sequence of not winning to extend into a fourth game, because then we've got Crystal Palace at home the week afterwards, who are on a really long unbeaten run at the moment, and that's going to be quite a difficult match as well. So it's an opportunity to get another 3 points, bring a bit of optimism back to the fans. And I've watched Everton for long enough. I should know better. Never be too optimistic about our prospects. They always let you down.
Yeah, it's such a shame that we feel this way, because as I, opened the show with, at the top of it was, we were just all so positive, and we felt like there was a bit of a change in momentum and a bit of a change in mentality, but there still seems to be a little bit of that old mentality, that old Everton about us, which is a real shame, because I agree with both of you that, that was a real opportunity to progress. And I think we would have had Chelsea at home as well. And I think Dave made the point on post-match that someone like a Chelsea probably don't play a full strength team against us. And again, it would have been a really good opportunity under the lights at the new stadium. Welcome one of the so-called big boys to the Hill Dickinson. And who knows, we could have progressed, but it'll always be it's just another one of an if and but or maybe to add to the list. Before we do go on to talk about West Ham, though, and looking forward to that game, just one note of me that I don't think many people have highlighted since the defeat, or I've not seen much of it. But for me, John, I think it's quite concerning and quite worrying how much of a lesser team we look without a 36-year-old Idrissa Gueye in the team. I think that ironically, in the Wolves game away in the league, we were coasting the game and we were 3-1 up, and he got substituted, and we fell up. I wouldn't say we fell apart. That's probably a bit harsh, but we certainly looked much less of a team with a structure. And I know all the talk's been about right back and having players in positions, having to start Coleman again at left back. And I know much of the talk this week as well has been about how Barry and Beto just aren't hitting the ground running as well as we maybe would have liked. And Beto's not the striker. He doesn't look like the quality striker that we need at times, and Barry's still a work in progress, so maybe we need to look at that area. For me, if I'm in that recruitment team, I've said this many a time on this show and on the Blue Room, if I'm in that recruitment team, I think my priority would be Idrissa Gueye's replacements, because without him, we look lost. That seems to be a growing concern for me. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, it's not just his legs, Idrissa Gueye, because he still looks very fit and looks capable of moving around the pitch, unlike Seamus Coleman, who unfortunately, he hasn't had the injuries that Coleman's had. But it's his assuredness on the pitch. He's like the, and I hate using this term because it's infantilizing the players, but he's like the player's dad on the pitch. He's, he comes on the pitch and everyone feels calmer. Everyone's a bit more confident with him on the pitch. We come off the pitch, and it's like Father Dougal during the funeral, with the ambulance, with the hearse in the grave. That's what it feels like sometimes. So we're not just replacing a player who's good box to box, as he is better box to box than we give people give him credit for. He's not just that linchpin in the midfield. He's a player who brings calm to the team, who brings that level of, I've been here, I've done it, I've played at this level. He's got that, like I don't know, he's just got that level of aura about him.
He's got composure, hasn't he? He adds composure.
That we don't have.
Team.
And it's a bit worrying. I don't know if you noticed this week, the Freiburg president was saying about one of the reasons they let Merlin Rail go is that he just wasn't available enough. He's injured, and Tuesday would have been a perfect game for him against a really paper-thin Wolves midfield. Well, unfortunately, our midfield of Burnham, Garner was having to play in about 4 different positions on Tuesday night. Burnham seems like a really decent lad. He's always comes across well when he speaks, but he's not a Premier League footballer. And I'm sorry, I'm not writing him off saying he'll never be one. He's not one yet. I think we sent the wrong midfielder on loan. I think we should have sent him on loan and used Harrison Armstrong in that, because I think Harrison Armstrong would have been more of a figure and more of a force in the midfield than Tim Burnham was. I mean, there was that shot he had in the second half, which was, do you remember Jeff? You'll probably remember it, Paul, because we're old, but Jeff Thomas's shot against France in '92.
Oh God, I remember that vividly.
I remember that.
Yeah.
You remember it, Warren?
Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice to you, Warren. But I don't know if you remember, there was a fanzine show called Stands and Room Only on BBC.
With Damien O'Brien.
Yeah, and he did. They did a JFK court scene. Do you know about do you know the bit where they're talking about the trajectory of the bullet?
Yeah.
About Jeff Thomas's shot, and that's exactly what Ed Burnham's shot reminded me of. It seemed to defy the laws of physics, and the lad needs a loan. He needs to be playing somewhere else where he's going to get regular football. I don't think this is the place for him to learn. We are in that phase where, we're all positive before all this, but we're only a couple of injuries away from back battling relegation again, and we can't afford to have people who we need to carry in the squad. We need players who are going to contribute, and I don't think Ida Burnham's going to do that. And Harrison Armstrong would have been. They said Harrison Ford. Then Harrison Armstrong would have been.
Harrison Ford probably would have been better in our midfield on Tuesday.
On Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah.
At least he could whip a ball in. Sorry, that was a bad joke. So yeah, I think that we need to sort the gay thing out, and we need it really in January or very latest next season, because there's every chance with players at that age to just drop off.
I think as well, John. I mean, Garner Gay's going to be missing, isn't he, for the African Cup of Nations?
Yeah.
So I checked our fixtures here. I think it's from the 21st of December to the 18th of January. Assuming Senegal go a long way in the competition, which is not inconceivable given the talent that they have.
Yeah.
Him and Ndai could be missing at least 5 Premier League games and an FA Cup third round game.
Yeah.
So you're right that this need to find someone who can fulfill that Garner Gay role is absolutely crucial, because we're going to miss him for a huge chunk of the season there. And really, I hadn't realised about Merivo's injury records. It's a concern if we haven't got a natural replacement there to fit in. I agree with you. I thought Tim Idegbonan was a strange selection on Tuesday. Yeah, squad player. He shouldn't be playing in a game of that importance. And I think you're right to highlight that. I thought James Garner had a really good game on Tuesday, covering the positions for other people throughout the 90 minutes, never gave up, almost scored the equaliser for us as well with that free kick that he took. But yeah, just a Garner Gay. One thing I love about Idrissa is, no matter what minutes of the game he gets a yellow card, he's never going to get a red card, because he's just got that knack of still winning the tackles without giving the referee decisions to make. And you just cannot replace a player.
He shows the experience, doesn't he, Paul?
In them moments. Exactly. When you just cannot replace that level of experience he brings to the club. And I thought your comments about being the dad to the other midfielders, John, is spot on, because they know he can rely on them. They can rely on Idrissa. They know if they miss a tackle in midfield, well, it doesn't matter, because Garner Gay's going to pick it up and get us out of the situation again. And yeah, obviously with his age, you do worry at some stage there might be a dip in his performances. But we have to find a way of, if he's not available, which is not going to be for the Cup of Nations, of who's going to slot into that role seamlessly. Because if we don't find somebody, then that period over Christmas could absolutely send us, in the wrong direction in the league table.
Yeah, hopefully we get things in place and sorted, and we start picking up a few more points in the league, and gather a bit more momentum that we felt we were going to have early part of the season. I am low to write people off and write players off, and I know you lads are not doing that or saying that. I think that we were talking the other week, weren't we, about when things were going our way. If we can't enjoy this, when can we enjoy it? And people rightly add lofty ambitions, and maybe a bit too lofty for a side that's in transition. I also think it goes the other way, though. I think even though we've lost poorly, it doesn't all of a sudden mean that we're, a terrible team with terrible players. And I think we're just highlighting, obviously, that, with things like AFCON coming up, there are areas of concern there that we need to address. And hopefully Everton will do that along the line. And, hopefully they can start picking up points. And we start, hopefully, by picking up a few more points on Monday night against West Ham. And again, we're playing a team who's struggling, Paul, and who's down there, and who's, the fans are on the backs. They've had a disappointing result last weekend at home. There's protests outside the ground of a weekend, against the ownership there. There's the manager who's under huge pressure. There's a big feel quite sorry for him in a way, because there's a big online thing at the moment where, I don't know if you've seen this, a lot of face swaps with different people, and he's plastered everywhere at the minute. And it's humorous in some ways, but in other ways it's hard on such a figure at the moment who's suffering. But this feels to me like Everton have to go and win. From what we can understand from the West Ham side of things, that regardless really what happens, this is probably, unless you somehow get to win, this is going to be Potter's last game in charge. And I think we'd like to play them now before any potential new manager bounce. Everton have to go and win this for me. We're a better team than them. They remind me a little bit of what we were like a few years back, when we were really in the mire and really stuck in a bad way. And there was protests outside about what was happening with our club. And we've come over the hill on the other side with that. And West Ham seem to be in that at the moment. And you just feel when the chips are down at a club, that's the time to go and beat them. And I think that we've got to start positive, and we've got to go with the strongest 11. You feel that, I mean, he has to make changes, Paul, doesn't he? But you feel that we do go with that strongest 11 again on Monday if it's available?
Well, I think the one thing we can't do, Warren, this starts off with the team that starts off on Tuesday. So, yeah, absolutely. I think if he reverts back to the team that maybe finished against Aston Villa, or the team that starts against Brighton Hove Albion, still a number of questions selection-wise, neither better or bad at convincing that role. So it's a question of how long do we persevere with those two strikers? Because basically, they seem to me to be the same type of striker, really. When you replace one, the other one comes on and plays exactly the same style, more or less. You're not particularly changing things. But yeah, my only concern with Monday evening is, for West Ham's manager and their players, it's probably a relief to be playing away from home, because they're avoiding the pressure from the fans, they're avoiding the process outside the grounds. And the only win this season has come away against Nottingham Forest, where they won 3-0. They have got players who can turn a game quite swiftly. I still remember James Ward-Prowse playing for Southampton, scoring that free kick against us about 2 or 3 seasons ago. And Jared Bowen, I've always really rated as a player, so he can cause us problems as well, as can Paqueta. So they have got players there who can certainly influence the game. On the other hand, I think the defence is appalling, and they've tried 2 goalkeepers this season, neither of which has convinced me that they're the answer. So it is a real chance for Everton to get another 3 points on the board. It's a chance for us to continue our unbeaten home run as well. And I think, as you said, Paul, before, we're all very positive at the end of the season, at the start of the season, which kind of makes the last 2 results, and particularly the Tuesday performance, more difficult to take. But overall, compared to last season, when I think we'd got 1 draw from the first 5 league fixtures, we're in a much healthier position with a much healthier squad. So we've really got to take advantage of that against a West Ham team who would be bereft of confidence. And I think the one thing we have to do, which we didn't do against Wolves, is score the first goal, because you just see how, with a struggling team, if they get the first goal, it just gives them a massive boost and a massive impetus to carry on.
I think that's key, isn't it, John? That if we get the first goal, I think there's every way, the crowd instantly forgive Tuesday, and there's every chance we can go on and get 2-3 more, especially with the way West Ham are. But I just hope that we can start with that positive mindset. But how are you feeling? What are your thoughts on Monday in terms of the team you'd start with, and your feelings and your thoughts on it? Are you like me in the fact that you expect Everton to win and think Everton will win, or do you think that Tuesday's probably thrown a bit of spanner in the works?
I'm an Everton fan. I never expect us to win. I want us to win, but history's shown us that what we expect and what we get are often diametrically opposed. However, you put out the football is a simple game, and it's made more complex by people trying to be too clever. You put out your best side, you put square pegs in square holes, and you do that, your chances of winning are increased. You don't try and be too clever by putting a 38-year-old injury-prone player at left back. You don't try and be too clever by putting a young kid in there who's not played. You don't put a player who's absolutely bereft of confidence on the right coming in, which is a preferred position. You put your best team out. You put the players that you've got you in that position where we are, where there's this level of confidence, where the players are believing each other, the fans are starting to believe in the players. But all that's being punctured now. And what is our saving grace is we're playing an absolute bin fire of a club at the moment. Now, you know, West Ham, I've got little, I like West Ham. I don't actually mind West Ham, but I've got little sympathy for them. 3 years ago or 2 years ago, they won a trophy and thought all of a sudden they thought they were Arsenal Mark II and they were the second biggest club in London. And they wanted Moyes gone. They wanted a new sexy foreign manager in who's going to bring football back. And look where it's gone for them. You know, it's a case of be careful what you wish for. Sometimes, you know, you've got to make baby steps, and West Ham haven't done. They're absolutely, as I said, they're a mess at the moment. You've got the manager's wife sending almost pornographic pictures to the fans yesterday. The owner's wife, not the manager's wife. Sorry, Graham, and Mrs. Potter, but the owner's wife. And you know, it's just it's literally it's very much like what you said earlier, what we were with this absolute insanity. All they're missing is a headlock and a couple of
and a dog barking as well.
Yeah, well, every time I mention Graham Potter, he goes mad.
Like a way, your dog must be a West Ham fan.
No, he wanted him as Everton manager, so he gets upset.
Well, do you know what? I know we're joking there, Paul, but I mean, I remember the time just prior to Moyes getting rehired for the second spell, there was talk of Graham Potter being linked, and I felt he was maybe treated a little bit harshly at Chelsea, but he just doesn't seem to, after Brighton, have settled anywhere and really proven himself. I mean, if it doesn't work out for him, which it looks like it's not going to, this very much looks like it could be his last ever job in England. I mean, he's got some rebuilding to do in terms of his career, but it probably looks like a little bit of a sliding doors moment that we didn't get him when we got Moyes instead, because I don't think Potter would have lasted too long here with the results he's currently getting at West Ham, would he?
No, I've always been of the opinion that Graham Potter is one of the most overrated managers in English football. Struggled to see what exactly he's achieved, even during his spell with Brighton in his last season at Brighton. If you look at some of the comments from the Brighton fans, they're all complaining about the style of football, the fact they weren't winning any home games, the fact they weren't scoring at home. So I was actually amazed when Chelsea moved in for him. He's kind of an example of the modern manager who's kind of adored by the media without actually achieving anything. You know, he's kind of the same category as people like Russell Martin or Ruben Sellers, who play a certain style of football that the owners seem to think the fans are going to love, but it's really successful. I think Graham Potter would have been a disaster choice for Everton. I really think if he'd taken over last season, we would have struggled to stay up desperately. So in that circumstance, David Moyes was the far better choice, a far better option than Graham Potter. It could well be his final game in charge of West Ham, as both you and John have said there. And you kind of... You don't want anyone to lose their job. You don't want anyone to be to put out to exit the club. But I think if they stay with Graham Potter, West Ham are going down this season, and I hate to bring him back up again. But you look at the club and think, if West Ham have got realistic ambitions of staying up this season, then forget about a certain style of football. You want a pragmatic manager, and you almost kind of think, could Sean Dyche go in there and do a certain job like he did for us for 2 seasons or so? But Graham Potter never really seen what the adulation was about Graham Potter, never really wanted to come to 2 hours, as I said before. And like you, Warren, I'd be really concerned if West Ham appointed a new manager at the weekend and had the new manager bands coming into the game. So I want to stay in charge till Monday. Absolutely did. I desperately want to stay in charge until Monday, because I think with Graham Potter in charge, we have a good chance of winning the game. I agree with John that I go to every Everton match expecting us to win. Drives the family mad, I know, but on the other hand, experience teaches us that it doesn't always happen to us that often. But Monday night is a golden opportunity to recover from these recent setbacks, to get the momentum going again. And if we don't win this game Monday night, I think there are going to be a few questions asked about where we're going as a club. What are our ambitions for this season?
Yeah, and that's again off the back of Tuesday's result, which has put us in this predicament, if you like. It would be nice for an Everton team to play a team under pressure and to pile on the pressure further. I think, like you've said there, Paul, we don't want to see anyone really lose the job, and we don't want to see anybody, vilified or, suffer. But I think there's been that many times down the years where we've been on the receiving end and we've gone to clubs and gifted them a win. And when I was messaging you both earlier about what we wanted to talk about tonight, I used the phrase Dr. Everton. You know, whenever a club needs a little health kick, it's always Dr. Everton who help out. And it would be nice just on this occasion if Everton can pile on the misery for another club for once rather than someone doing it to us. So I am expecting a win. I do believe as well, I might be wrong in saying this, I think at home on a Monday night and Monday night games, we've actually got a very good record. I don't want to tempt fate and jinx it, but I think we've lost very rarely and we've won the majority of our games at home on a Monday night when we've been live.
We're unbeaten now, aren't we, on a Monday?
Well, that's what I mean. I've put the hex on it now, but hopefully...
No, I mean, we're unbeaten at the Hill Dickinson. We haven't lost on a Monday.
We haven't conceded the goal, have we, in the league as well? So that's another reason to be positive, I suppose. But yeah, I do expect us to go in and put a performance in and respond to Tuesday night's debacle, and I do expect us to get a win. I feel we could get a routine 2-0 win here. If I come to you both with a prediction for Monday and what you think will happen, Paul, how do you see it going?
Yeah, I think we'll win. I'll be extremely optimistic here. I know this will come back to bite me. I think we'll go for a 3-1 win.
3-1 win. John, what about you?
I think 4-1. I actually think we'll concede first. I think they'll score first.
And then we'll respond quickly.
And
I think for me, just a nice, easy, routine 2-0 win would be
I just think that, as Paul said earlier, that defence of theirs, and the goalkeeping situation. I mean, the goalkeeping situation was that bad. They've postponed themselves, haven't they? They had to bring Lucas Fabianski back at like 54 years of age.
Yeah,
because Hermanson and what's the other guy's name? I forgot his name. The French lad.
Is it Areola?
Yeah, Areola. Yeah, what a nipple he is. Well, to be fair, he's aptly named, isn't he? Because he is surrounded by nipple. So.
Well, let's hope that our, the likes of, I'd imagine Grealish and Njai and Dewsbury Hall come back into the starting code.
And Njai was worrying on Tuesday for me because he started off great and then he just seemed to turn into, I don't know, like one of those.
He came with a knock, didn't he, after the international break? He came back from that with a knock, and I thought he tailed off a little bit.
He just seemed to be trying to shoot from anywhere.
Yeah, I think he tailed off against Villa a little bit because he was maybe still carrying that injury and maybe he was a little bit...
On Tuesday, he just cut a forlorn figure.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Les made the point on post-match that it felt like they were all trying too hard to get back into that game, and maybe with 6 days rest now and only playing half a game or whatever he played on Tuesday, he might come back fully recovered. But I certainly think with those three players, definitely we've got the capability of really hurting that poor West Ham defence that you mentioned. So here's hoping that we can go into it and we can come out with that win that we all definitely want. So we'll see what happens. We'll leave it there tonight. My thanks to both Paul and John. Just a little plea from me, really. As we move forward in the weekly, I'm really lucky. I've got some really good people who are able to join me on the show. I am after some more female interaction in terms of people who are coming on the show. So if you're a woman who's interested in coming on, we'd like to be more diverse on this show. And the Blue Room, I know, speaking to Dave's certainly keen for this. We'd like to get more female voices talking about Everton. If you do listen to the show and you are a woman who listens to us regularly, do get in touch with us. I'd love to be able to have you on the weekly and be able to talk more about Everton. That'd be something that we're really looking forward to maybe hopefully getting down the line. So if that is you, do drop us a line and do get in touch with us via all our socials or however you can interact with us. Leave us a comment and let us know, and we'd love to be able to get you on. Going forward on the Blue Room as well, we've got the usual coming up. We've got post-match after the game on Monday. Blue Monday will be back as well. The lads with the byline will be back. We'll be back as well next week with another weekly, and all your Everton content will be here as usual. So get us listened to and get us subscribed and like and comment, and we will do all we can to respond and get back to you as well. But as I said, my thanks to Paul and John. It's been another weekly here with me, Warren. We'll speak to you soon, hopefully after a brilliant win against West Ham. Up the Toffees, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.